My arteries were almost completely blocked. And I was advised to go through a bypass. One is bound to think that what if you don't come back?
If something, for instance, happens to me and I don't have a registered will in the UAE.
Absence of a will delays things. If you're leaving a child who's 5 years old, you have to wait another 16 years to be able to get access to those funds. A bank account is frozen. Guardianship, it goes back to the grandfather. The mother is the custodian only. The court is having the funds. How do you think it is going to work? A debit card, if it is used by an individual, be it your spouse, after your passing, it is a criminal offense. The joint bank accounts in the UAE are the biggest red flag.
How does a will address all of those situations? Can it address all of those situations?
The will simplifies everything. You can just write your wishes and you can specify everything there. It's a very simple document. Once that is done, and the court just needs to follow it.
Though you've been assisting individuals and families with their wills for over a decade now, you recently had to get your own sorted.
I was lucky that I got a second chance. But what if I didn't have a second chance? You've worked hard to make something. If for the sake of just a few hours or a few thousand dirhams, you don't pay attention to this document, then what justice are you doing with your family?
Welcome to Think and Grow 10X, the space where we grow your mind, your money, and your mission. But today we're flipping the script, literally. I'm Sharjeel Akhtar, and I'm stepping in as the host for this very special episode. Because our guest today is someone who's the usual voice behind this podcast. The man who's been guiding your questions, your challenges, and your ambitions week after week. Muhammad Tariq. He is the founder of UAE's leading will writing and legacy planning law firm. He's helped thousands of individuals and families navigate one of the most emotionally loaded yet essential parts of life, making sure your family and your future are protected. But today's episode is not about legal documentation and technical details. It's about real life and real people. So if you've ever found yourself thinking, I don't need a will right now, I'm too young, or I'll get around to it eventually, this episode is for you. Tariq, welcome to your own podcast from the other side of the table.
Thank you, Sharjeel. Thank you for having me, should I say? Or should I ask you?
How does it feel being in the hot seat for a change?
Yeah, it seems quite exciting, actually. I'm very, very excited to see how the guests would typically feel while sitting in this seat right here.
Fantastic. Well, I hope it's all right that I do to you what you do to your guests every week and put you on the spot.
Permission is granted.
Thank you. Let's start with the big picture. You've worked with thousands of individuals dealing with some of life's most sensitive and defining moments. What made you so passionate about will writing and legacy planning in the first place? How did it all start?
Well, that's very interesting. So when we started Legal Ins, in more than a decade actually, there has been a huge gap in the UAE market in terms of handling the most important document. That is the will here in this case. That's the most important document for any expat coming to the UAE. So if you look at the expat life, it's something very simple. You know, a family or an individual comes from overseas to settle in the UAE, to have a better life, to make a living, and to perhaps leave a legacy for their family or children.
Absolutely.
Could be a spouse. Before we move on, I have one simple question for you. Are you ready to take on and start your 10x journey? If yes, hit that subscribe button now. Because in every episode, we're diving deeper and deeper into mindset shifts, success strategies, and real stories to help you think bigger and grow faster. Are you in? If yes, subscribe now and let's take this journey together. So there has been a bit of a gap there. And when we sort of ventured in, we felt that this very document was actually accessible at the time, but with a lot of money attached to it. Law firms that were drafting this document, they were charging hefty amounts, real hefty amounts. We came in, we used technology, we made it more accessible to the individuals. Most importantly, we made it cost effective and accessible to everyone around the UAE and overseas, anyone who's having assets here.
And that's how the core USP started, correct?
That's right.
Available for the masses at a very cost-effective rate.
Correct.
So if we go to the LegalIn's website, or if any of our viewers go to the LegalIn's website, all they have to do is fill in the details. And how long does it take?
I mean, a will can be drafted and registered literally in a day or two as well, but it depends upon the individual. If they take time to revert with comments and what have you, it can take up to a week. And in a lot of the cases, people slow down during the weekdays here in the UAE because it's a busy place, so it takes a couple of weeks in some other cases. But it can be a very, very fast-moving document in terms of starting from drafting to registration.
So let's talk a little bit more about the details. Over the past decade, the UAE, specifically Dubai, has evolved significantly, especially from a technological standpoint. So how does the will landscape look like today? Maybe if we could start off with defining what are the different types, where are the different jurisdictions available, and for most of our viewers, you were mentioning the expat life. They have a very specific definition of what a will is back home, wherever home may be. And it's very different in the UAE. There are very specific laws that apply. Maybe you could shed some light into that?
Yeah, the UAE has come a long way in terms of the regulations, the legislation itself. I mean, when we came into the UAE, I remember talking to friends I remember instances where I used to drop my children at school and talking to individuals with, small families, one or two children, they used to tell me, they've given a power of attorney to their spouse to handle their estate planning. They've given a debit card to their spouse. If God forbid, if something happens, they can simply go and withdraw cash from the ATM. And in other cases, power of attorney can work well. In both cases, people were mistaken simply because, power of attorney expires upon death. And a debit card, if it is used by an individual, be it your spouse, after your passing, it is literally a criminal offense because you're actually taking away money which belongs to the legal heirs. So people weren't even educated on these topics. There were very, very few instances where people could actually understand the concept of a will through articles written on the internet or maybe talking to law firms. But correct understanding wasn't well established. Another example would be that anyone who would speak to me, they would tell me they need a Sharia compliant will, right? So what they essentially meant was that they don't want to follow Sharia law,
right?
And they want to have their wishes written down on a piece of paper.
So they don't want a Sharia compliant
will.
They
don't want a Sharia compliant will, when in fact they were told they need to have a Sharia compliant will because they are in a Sharia compliant country.
Right.
So there have been many, many misconceptions. Ever since then, of course, DIFC has come into existence, the Will Registration Center there. And ADJD, Abu Dhabi Judicial Department, has launched Will Registration Center there too. Of course, now DIFC, you can register a will if you're a non-Muslim.
Okay.
And with Abu Dhabi Judicial Department, you can register a will even if you're a Muslim. So both.
So that's
Muslim,
a recent development.
That is a recent
correct?
development.
Muslims were not able to register wills in the past.
Correct.
Fantastic. I was speaking to one of our colleagues who's recently just traveled to the UAE, and they were of the opinion that they have a spouse, and the first thing they did when they arrived to the UAE was open a joint account just to preserve whatever assets they have in the event that something happened to them. But that's not the right understanding, is it?
Well, let me put it straight.
Yeah.
joint account is the worst thing you can do in the UAE.
How so?
Do not have a joint account simply because a bank account is frozen upon the death of an individual. If it is a joint account, then it is still frozen. So the second account holder, if it is a spouse, in this case it will be a spouse, would have to wait for the entire probate process to be completed before the funds are made accessible.
On that note, can you walk us through exactly what happens if something, for instance, happens to me and I don't have a registered will in the UAE?
First of all, let me ask you, why don't you have a registered will?
We'll get to that later.
Okay. Well, if something happens to an individual without registering a will, that was your question, right?
Yeah.
So there are laws, of course. I mean, recently there has been a development in the UAE federal law, and also there has been a development in the courts in Abu Dhabi where they have applied a civil law system. So upon the death of an individual, the court has to call in witnesses who are known to the deceased. The court wants to understand the family tree so that they can issue the succession certificate, which establishes the number of family members that the deceased left. Right? Could be the parents, could be spouse, could be children, or could be anyone who is within the family of the deceased in terms of the Sharia law, for example.
Okay.
Now, it is at this point in time, once the family tree is established, the court would want to know, of course, if you want to apply Sharia law, you have that option. If you are a non-Muslim, you can apply the law of your home country. You can apply the law of the UAE, which gives you the option to actually split the assets between your spouse and children 50-50.
Okay.
So once the succession certificate is issued, then the court would go through the process of contacting, of course, the relevant authorities to establish the ownership of the assets that are left behind. So once the ownership is established, then the distribution takes place. Now, there are many, many nitty-gritties around this which need to be well explained. Of course, we can have a discussion on that. But this is the process that is followed, of course, in the absence of a will.
It sounds like a very cumbersome and lengthy process, just because somebody didn't have a specific document that specified exactly what they wanted.
Well, I mean, the process is complicated in terms of the succession certificate that needs to be issued.
Okay.
So because the witnesses are called, they need to establish the family tree. That in itself can take time. And we've seen instances where, it's hard to find people who can actually visit the court or who can actually attend the online hearing.
Right.
So it can put the family...
And family can be scattered in different places in the world as well.
Well, the family is not necessarily in the picture at this stage because now we're establishing the fact how many members are there in the first instance.
Okay.
So this process in itself can take time because finding a person, it could be a friend, it could be someone who's related to you. Finding that person could take some time. Now we're talking about a situation where the surviving member of the family, spouse, is under distress, is under a lot of stress. And the visa situation is not clear either. You can get an extension of the visa, but you have to now deal with the day-to-day life at the same time.
Yeah.
We're not talking about, just establishing the succession certificate.
While dealing with the grief.
Of course. Now you're having to deal with the financial condition.
Right.
You have to have access to funds.
Right.
To be able to deal with the day-to-day life.
Right.
And it's all about planning that, event should something happen.
Right.
And, we have seen instances where wives, for example, the spouses have struggled to, meet ends because the person, the deceased or the husband in this case, didn't plan things well.
Yeah.
So absence of a will delays things. It leaves the spouse in a situation where they have to, get around, find people to talk to the court and give evidence and establish the family tree through
Yeah.
a succession certificate.
Yeah.
That step in itself can take a lot of time.
You know, this is something that's actually very close to my home. Recently, I lost one of my uncles in
Sorry
the
to hear
UAE.
that.
Thank you. And the home that the family lived in was sponsored by the company. The entire family, he had a wife and 3 kids. All of them were his dependents. All of a sudden, out of the blue, he was diagnosed with an illness. And immediately after, he was not able to survive the procedures, the medical procedures, and passed away. And now they are in exactly this process wherein they're trying to figure out not just process the grief of a sudden loss in their family, but also how does the home work? How does the sponsorship work? Who gets the assets that he had?
Yeah.
So it gets very complicated, especially when we have very complicated family setups today. People have multiple marriages, for instance, kids from different relationships, assets in different countries. How does a will address all of those situations? Can it address all of those situations?
Well, the will simplifies everything. You can just write your wishes in terms of who will get your assets, and you can specify everything there. And who will be the guardian of your children if you're leaving children behind, children below the age of 21. And once that is done, it's a very simple document. Once that is done, then the court just needs to follow it. The process of succession certificate is completely eliminated in this case. You just apply for the will to be probated.
And it's instant execution.
It is, I mean, it does take a little bit of a time. The assets are frozen.
But quicker than
It is
if you
a lot
didn't have
quicker,
it.
of course.
Okay.
It's a lot quicker, and it settles so many issues that can actually arise in the absence of a will. I'll give you an example, a simple example. A lot of people are again mistaken. They don't want to have a will because the law gives you the option to actually, for your wife to choose 50-50 distribution. In this example, 50% goes to the wife, 50% goes to the minor children, if you are leaving children. Typically, children of the deceased in the UAE are typically minor.
Yeah.
Because if you are in 50s, you're retiring, you tend to go back home unless you're retiring here, which is not a common feature at the moment in the UAE. So we've seen instances where minor children have been left behind, and now 50-50 situation has arisen.
Yeah.
So what happens here is that court issues the order after the succession certificate and all of that. But the share of the minor children, if it is the bank accounts, for example, the money is retained by the court in its own account until the children become of age, which is 21 years of age. I mean, if you're leaving a child who's 5 years old, you have to wait another 16 years to be able to allow your child to get access to those funds.
It doesn't automatically go to the mother,
It
for
doesn't
instance,
automatically
if the husband
go
has passed away.
Correct.
Okay.
So the mother, if she needs access to those funds, she needs to justify every time to the court as to where the funds are going to be utilized and what is the need. Court has to protect the interests of the child. Right. So for that reason, they don't release the money. The mother needs to apply to the court every time. So this is one issue. The second issue is if you don't have a will in place, the guardianship of that minor child or children. Those
children are actually considered an asset.
Correct.
In this definition.
I mean, you can classify them as assets. Of course, they're human beings. But
of course. Of course.
The point here is that the guardianship, it goes back to the grandfather, the paternal grandfather, right?
Okay.
So now the mother is facing a situation where she has the custody as per the law. She is the custodian of the child. She is having to apply to the court through the grandfather, who is the ultimate guardian, to get the money released for the education of the child, for example.
Wow. Okay.
So you see, this
practical hurdles coming.
It is a real practical hurdle, even if you're happy with 50-50 distribution.
Right.
I mean, what happens here is that because expat life has its own perks, of course, you need to make sure that you have access to the funds on a regular basis. Right. You don't need to have, if you need to go to the court every time, it can actually, really hamper the upbringing and the overall management of the child's education, for example.
Right.
So grandfather is involved who's the legal guardian, and then the mother is the custodian only. The court is having the funds. And how do you think it is going to work?
Right now, so far, the conversations we've been having and all of the explanation you've given is on the basis that the entire family are UAE residents. What if there are obviously expats that come to earn a living in the UAE, their families back home? In such scenarios, can a non-resident be appointed as a legal guardian in the will?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, non-residents can be legal guardian, can be a legal guardian. A non-resident can be a beneficiary of an asset as well. So that is very much possible. The point here is that it is important to have a will in place so that you can actually make sure that there is some element of certainty. There is some element of helping the cause here in terms of helping the survivors
Right.
to get access to the funds quickly and to sort of sort out the legal guardianship issue
Right.
if the mother is intended to be the legal guardian.
You touched a little bit about on DIFC and Abu Dhabi judicial courts. Could you maybe give us a little bit more detail as to how to choose which jurisdiction is right, and at the same time, what kind of will options there are?
Right. So DIFC is essentially a common law jurisdiction.
Okay.
It's based on English law, and it's only available to non-Muslims. Anyone over the age of 21 can write a will with the DIFC.
Okay.
Anyone who's having an asset, of course. I mean, an asset would be a bank account, for example.
Right.
Could be a piece of property.
Right.
Could be anything that you own in the UAE.
Right.
So you can have a single will or mirror wills. If your spouse is also having some sort of an asset, you can just write and, of course, through a lawyer, write the will and register it with the DIFC. Slightly more expensive in terms of the government fee. Their fee is slightly higher than the Abu Dhabi Judicial Department. And if something happens, the will is probated in a very, very timely and efficient manner by the DIFC. We've seen many, many instances of probate ever since the DIFC was launched, the registration center was launched, and it's been absolutely smooth for the survivors.
They're more or less equal in terms of process. Costs are slightly different.
Yes.
But depending on which category you fall into, you go into
that
specific jurisdiction.
Correct. So a non-Muslim can also go to Abu Dhabi.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So where Muslims can also go.
Okay.
So Abu Dhabi court is essentially a civil law system, and they've permitted for both of non-Muslims and Muslims to register the wills. And of course, it is in Abu Dhabi. It's done online.
Right.
DIFC is done online as well. You don't need to visit the DIFC. Anyone within the UAE or outside can register wills with both of these departments completely online.
Okay.
You don't have to go anywhere at all.
So if I'm a non-Muslim and you're saying that I have the option of going both to DIFC as well as ADJD.
Correct.
And DIFC is more expensive, why would I go to DIFC? Is there a specific scenario where I would be required?
Yeah, so a lot of expats from Western jurisdictions feel more comfortable with the common law jurisdiction.
Okay.
So it's a kind of a peace of mind.
Right.
They feel more comfortable. They feel it's an English-speaking jurisdiction. There's no Arabic involved.
Right.
And the lawyers who go there, they're all English-speaking.
Okay.
And it's a different environment.
Ease of understanding.
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's a matter of convenience and understanding.
Right.
So a lot of people from Western countries feel more comfortable with that. Abu Dhabi Judicial Department has both languages, English and Arabic. It's much cheaper in terms of the government fee. But of course, it's in a different emirate, although everything is online.
Right.
If you feel comfortable, Abu Dhabi is the way forward. They're also fine.
Okay.
So ultimately, it's a matter of choice.
Right.
A lot of people feel more comfortable with DIFC if they come from common law jurisdictions.
Fair. So obviously, over 80% of the UAE comprises of expats coming from all over the world, 200 plus nationalities. Can a UAE will be enforced in any other jurisdiction or country outside of the UAE?
That's a very important question. And the reality, of course, is that we all come from different countries, and it's very likely that we have assets, anything like a bank account, property, or, any other things back home
Right.
or in other countries.
Right.
So DIFC wills have the option for you to choose the other jurisdictions to be included in your will
Okay.
if the laws in those jurisdictions are similar to the DIFC law. So
Okay.
you have to consult with your lawyer if it is possible for you to include the assets back home in the DIFC will, so you don't have to write a separate will,
Right.
right, for that
Okay.
country. If it is not possible, then it's recommended that you should have a will separately written for that country.
In that country.
In that country,
Specific.
there are many countries where there are notarization requirements. There are many countries across Europe which have forced heirship. Just like in Sharia law, there are certain set of beneficiaries
Right.
allocated under the Sharia. Similarly, in other jurisdictions in Europe specifically, there are forced heirship laws where even if you write a will, you cannot bypass that mechanism. So your will has to be compliant with the rules and regulations which require certain beneficiaries to have certain share in your estate.
Fair. We've touched on family. We've touched on the legal landscape of the UAE. Someone like yourself, for instance, family offices are also very common in the UAE. At the same time, you're an entrepreneur. You're founder of a group of companies. How should founders or entrepreneurs handle their wills? Should they separate their business interest with their personal interest? Could all of it be covered in a single will? What if it's a family office situation? How do you handle all of these things?
Right. So with complex business structures, a lot of people, depending upon their individual situation, they can write a will.
Okay.
Will is simple. It's a very simple solution. A lot of people tend to go for foundations in the UAE, which are similar to trusts.
Right.
Foundation is slightly different from a trust in terms of its legal recognition because it's like a company.
Right.
You can set up a foundation, have your assets transferred to a foundation, and there's an element of continuity as well.
Right.
So the probate process, which applies to a will, doesn't essentially apply to a foundation. So for that reason, a lot of people want to make sure that businesses need to continue. There is some element of governance as well. They write a charter of the foundation. They give certain responsibilities to the council members and the guardian, for example, and the business can continue as a going concern. If it comes to a will, of course, it's different. The probate process, which is the court process, that needs to be completed. The shares are, for example, frozen. There can't be any transfer of shares and everything has to go through the court process. So any business owner, if they think that they need to ensure continuity, they should think about setting up a foundation instead of will. You would still need a will because you need to appoint guardians for your children if you're leaving children behind.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and foundations are something that Think and Grow is going to be touching on next week.
Yes, we'll be touching on
in detail.
Yes, absolutely.
But let's say in scenarios where it's a single shareholder of the company, you're suggesting that foundations are more appropriate and we cannot address this matter with a will as to in the event something happens to the shareholder.
It can be addressed. Of course, there could be practical hurdles in terms of the probate process. The company's business, the business needs to run as a going concern for any entrepreneur. I think no one wants to die and just leave the business behind as if
it's about legacy.
It didn't exist. So one should plan for the future. The business continuity is very, very crucial to any entrepreneur or a business person, in my view. I think they should look at the foundation as an option. Of course, will can answer the issues here. You can write a will and then just leave it at that. But if you want to ensure that your business is running smoothly and you want to put in place structure, foundation would allow you to do that.
Fair. We touched on this a little bit. You had mentioned minors can be appointed as beneficiaries. But do they have to be a certain age? Can they inherit the assets? If I have an underage child or children, how does it work? And what's the age of minority in the UAE?
So the age of majority in the UAE is 21.
Okay.
And in some other countries, it's 18.
Yeah.
Assets can definitely be transferred to minor children who are below the age of 21. They can be beneficiaries in a will.
Okay.
Typically, how it works here in the UAE is that, because it's a very, very young population in terms of the expats. I mean, typically people come from back home.
Yeah.
They have their, jobs here. They have businesses here, and they're in their 30s, 40s, and early 50s. This is the population demographics in the UAE. If I
So
understand,
they'll have young
correctly.
kids.
Yeah, they have young
Minors
kids
for the most part.
So what they do is that they appoint their spouse as the beneficiary.
Yeah.
They typically give 100% of the assets to the spouse, and they also appoint the spouse as the guardian of the minor children.
Okay.
So if something happens, the spouse, in this case the wife, would acquire everything under her name, and then she can manage the children according to her own wishes. So this is how it works. But in case husband and wife pass away
Yes.
together, which is unlikely but can still happen, this is life,
Mhm.
alternate beneficiaries are appointed in a will, which in this case typically are children.
Okay.
A lot of people divide the assets between the children equally. It depends upon your own requirements, really.
Right.
So children can acquire assets through a will, even if they are below the age of 21, to answer your question.
Mhm. And who controls those funds? Because obviously they're children.
Right. So if a child ends up acquiring an asset, for example, property,
Mhm.
title deed would have the name of the guardian,
Okay.
right? And if it is a bank account,
Mhm.
the money would still, go to the child, but of course under a certain account which is managed by the guardian.
Okay.
There will be a certain element of supervision by the court because
to ensure no
to-
misuse.
correct.
Okay.
To ensure there is no misuse, because if the guardian is left free with the money, it can really jeopardize the future of the child.
Correct. So we've talked about a variety of different scenarios of how we can draft a will, what could be included in it, what could be covered in it. When it comes time, and this is the difficult question, to actually execute it, because now the unforeseen circumstance or the foreseen circumstance wherein the will needs to be executed, how does that process work? It's called probate, I believe.
It's called the process of probate.
Right.
It's very simple. With the DIFC and the other courts, for example, basically the executor appointed in the will is the person who actually executes the will, takes the will to the court to request for a probate order. And typically, the spouse, if he's the beneficiary, he's also appointed as the executor.
Okay.
So in our experience, nearly in all cases, the executor is the same person as the beneficiary, to simplify things,
Okay.
unless it's a minor child.
Okay.
So the wife would take the will to the court, fill in some paperwork, the application forms, and request for a probate order. The court would take the list of assets from the wife
Mhm.
and contact the relevant government departments, for example, the land department, the banks, about the actual existence of those assets.
Okay.
And once the court hears back from those relevant departments, the court issues the order, and then based on that, the transfers can take place.
Fair. Obviously, given that you've been doing this for over a decade, Tariq,
Mhm.
and over the course of this entire duration, there are thousands and thousands of different individuals and families that you've supported. And as serious and as critical as this topic is, I'm sure there must have been some moments that were lighthearted. People wanted some interesting clauses or outrageous clauses included in their will. So, would love to hear from you anything that comes to your mind in terms of a specific clause that someone wanted included and that raised an eyebrow for you? No names, of course.
So there have been requests, for example, leaving money for animals, for example, pets. People have pets at home. If something happens, they tend to give instructions as to how the money should be applied towards the care of the pets, for example.
Right.
we haven't seen anything outrageous, I would say,
Okay.
to be honest.
Okay.
But of course, I mean, people tend to think through a lot when it comes to looking at the alternates. For example, if something happens to both the husband and wife,
Yeah.
and if the children are not there either,
Right.
if something happens to the entire family, then people tend to think hard in terms of who will be the ultimate beneficiary of the assets. Some people would like to leave things to a charity, to a trust, or to someone they know, to friends, for example. We've seen
Right.
instances where some people have left money for their housemates, for example.
Right.
Either in situations where no one is left in their family, or even together with the wife, just to sort of as a gesture of goodwill
Right.
for the people who are helping them at their homes, providing house help. Every family is different. Every
Right.
person is different.
Right.
They all go through life in a different way. So nothing outrageous, I would say.
Right.
Personal preferences, family situation, they tend to play a lot
Fair.
in determining who are the beneficiaries.
I had a friend recently that unfortunately passed away. This is around last year. He had a very expansive business empire, had properties, all kinds of assets in different countries. But because most such individuals, and whether they're entrepreneurs, founders, or the holder of various different assets, they don't necessarily share all of this information with their families or their next of kin because maybe they, for a variety of different reasons. So in such a scenario, because I now see that his family is learning on a regular basis till today that, oh, he had a company over there as well. He had a bank account over there as well. He had a property over there as well. It wasn't covered. So what do you recommend people do before you even go on about writing a will? How do you inform what is your holistic asset class that you have or asset list that you have? Is there some kind of a master list that you should maintain?
Typically, wills do not include the list of assets.
This is in the UAE.
This is in the UAE.
Okay.
So wills typically cover assets in broad terms.
Okay.
So anything you leave behind, movable assets,
Okay.
immovable assets. Movable assets could be vehicles. It could be piece of furniture. It could be anything that you want to sort of leave behind.
Okay.
Immovable assets would be money in the bank account, property, for example.
Right.
End of service benefits,
Right.
anything that cannot move, essentially.
Right.
So we cover everything in blanket terms so that there's nothing missed out. If you list the assets in the will, your asset situation changes from time to time. So what you'd be forced to do is to amend the will
And you
every
have to keep
time.
updating it.
Correct. And
right.
it's not an easy affair. I mean, you have to pay the government fee and all that, the lawyer's fee as well for making the amendments. So that's the reason that we do blanket wills.
Right.
What we do recommend in parallel is that you should have a list of assets at
Okay.
home. It's something very, very important. If you don't have a list of assets at home, it's going to leave the family in the dark.
Right.
As simple as that. Not only that you should have the list of assets at home, you should update it on a regular basis, at least
Right.
I would say 3 months, just to sort of, double check everything is current and updated. List down all of your bank accounts, list down all the properties that you own, list down anything else that you own in the UAE.
Fair.
So that, the family.
Or outside for that
Or
matter.
outside.
Yeah.
That is a separate issue now. For outside, you need to have a separate will. But you should list the assets. Of course, good point there. So you need to list all of the assets in one place so your family knows exactly what you've left behind.
Fair.
And they can take action on it, be it inside or outside. For outside, again, separate will would be required. You need to consult with the lawyer about, if the UAE will can actually work in other jurisdictions.
Fair. Fair. Thank you for that. So you asked me a little earlier in this episode why I don't have a will. So I had a lot of misconceptions that you have thankfully cleared today, but the majority of it was that it seemed too expensive. It seemed too cumbersome. I thought it's as simple as drafting a document that lists down everything of mine should go to XYZ person. It's not as simple, right? Why should anyone consult someone like you or an entity like Legal Ins for their will? Can I just write it on a piece of paper? Is that sufficient? Will it hold up in a court of law?
Well, first of all, the UAE requires the wills to be registered with the relevant government departments.
Right. Okay.
So consulting with a law firm becomes mandatory in this case. Of course, you need to have the will drafted, which complies with the relevant rules and regulations, especially the relevant government departments, in this case, DIFC and ADJD. They also do their own review of the wills that are drafted by the lawyers. So they also want to ensure that the wills are drafted correctly and they are enforceable eventually if something goes wrong. So yes, I mean, registration is mandatory here in this country. For that reason, I mean, of course,
I can't DIY it.
You cannot.
Okay.
I mean, some other countries, for example, the UK, I mean, you don't need to register a will. So you can essentially write it on a piece of paper and just sign it in the presence, rather, of two witnesses, and it will hold in the court of law. In some other countries, you can write wills with notaries, and there are different laws, rules, and regulations in different countries.
Okay. We've talked about the assets that we have. What about my liabilities? In the event I have any liabilities, if I have any debts, anything that I owe anyone, if I've given everything to somebody in my will, how does the liabilities get addressed? Do they get waived off?
So any liabilities could potentially be in the form of a debt or a loan from a bank.
Okay.
Typically, what happens here in the UAE is that people have mortgages.
Okay.
People have credit cards. People have car loans.
Okay.
So in the case of mortgages, there is a mandatory life insurance that any bank would require for you to have before they actually disburse the funds under mortgage. So if something happens to you, then the bank would be paid by the life insurance company, and the property becomes free of debt.
Okay. Fair.
Right?
And what if I owe someone money?
So if you owe someone any money, then the money is supposed to be paid out of the estate that you leave or the assets that you leave behind the bank account. The court will ensure that all types of debts where there is no life insurance, it could be in the case of personal loans, could be in the case of credit card debts, could be in the case of vehicles. If there is no life insurance there, then the court would ensure that the debts are paid out first before the assets become available for distribution.
Right. Okay.
So that's how it works. So debts are paid before
it goes
the distribution.
To the distribution.
Before the distribution takes place. And a lot of people tend to ask if the beneficiaries would be required to pay the debts in case there are no assets left behind eventually.
Right.
Even if there is a will, there's a chance that the individual have taken a lot of, taken a lot of
more
loans,
liabilities than assets, essentially.
If they have had more liabilities than assets.
Right.
No, the beneficiary would not be required to pay from their pocket. So that's very important for anyone to understand. The beneficiary would only be required to pay from the assets that you leave behind. And the court will ensure that, actually. They wouldn't be required to pay anything if there's nothing left behind.
Now, obviously, you mentioned bank accounts get frozen in the event there is no registered will in place. How does the family run? What if, for instance, the backup that I've created for my family is that I have maybe an offshore account? Is that covered under the UAE will, or will I have access to that? Can you maybe address both those areas?
The joint bank accounts in the UAE are the biggest red flag.
Right.
Because if they are frozen, then both sides,
there's nothing you can do.
There's nothing that you can do until the probate order is issued. To avoid that situation, first of all, both spouses should have separate bank accounts.
Right.
Do not even think about having a joint bank account unless there is a justifiable reason. There's a strategic reason that you have a joint bank account.
So you're saying there's no reason to have a joint bank account?
If you have a reason, you can have it, but
Okay.
it needs to be well thought through.
Okay.
Otherwise, do not have a joint account in the UAE.
Okay.
Have a joint account overseas in an offshore jurisdiction
Okay.
instead. And you should have that actually, because you need to have quick access to funds. So if you have a joint account overseas, for example, in Cayman Islands
Yeah.
or Jersey, that account would allow for the survivor to take all.
Right.
Right? So you can actually nominate the beneficiary in that bank account, and you don't need a will in that instance.
Right. And that is also something that Legal In supports with.
So we don't support in the opening of bank accounts, but
Okay.
we do have a network of banking partners who can
Okay.
actually support you to open a bank account in an offshore jurisdiction.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So you should have not only that, I mean, you should make contingencies where, there is some cash handy available, for any emergency.
Right.
There needs to be emergency funds left with your spouse in both ways, so that, there's no disruption
Right.
to the day-to-day life of the entire family. Because if you're not leaving any contingency,
Yeah.
you're actually leaving the family in a very, very tough spot.
As we're headed towards a more paperless country and headed towards more digitization, if I'm speaking for myself, I don't keep any cash around. I
Yeah.
don't even have my physical card because it's all on my phone now.
Correct.
So this is a very great point that cash on the side is very, very important. You mentioned we should have an offshore account, but in the event we already do, can you have it covered under a UAE will?
So first of all, if you can nominate the beneficiary in that account,
Right.
which is usually usually possible,
Right.
there's no need for a will,
Okay.
unless you want to nominate alternate beneficiaries. For example, in a typical scenario, two joint account holders, husband and wife, you nominate your wife as the beneficiary in that account. If something happens to you, wife actually gets control of the account. But if something happens to both of you, in that
Yes.
situation, you need to have a will in place.
Right. Okay. Fair. So Netflix and all of these other subscriptions are one area. But what if I have, let's say, a YouTube channel and I'm an influencer and I'm actively earning income off of that digital presence? How does that work?
Well, I mean, if it is an asset, there's some money coming in. You need to look at the YouTube terms and conditions. If there is a beneficiary there, then that should sort out things. If it is not, then it can be a subject matter of the will, which would essentially mean that it becomes part of the other assets. And if there is content that has been historically published and that results in some ongoing income, you should be entitled to receive that as part of the distribution in the will.
Fair. Fair. Now, has there been a situation, or if any of our viewers find themselves in this situation, wherein maybe you have a sudden hospitalization, or maybe there's a sudden need or requirement for you to address your beneficiaries in a will? Is there a fast track manner of getting this done? Have you ever had any client that faced such a scenario?
So we've had instances where some people have approached us in the past where they were either going through a surgery, for example, or some life situation which was quite critical. And we've arranged, for the wills to be registered in a matter of a few hours as well. One example would be where, we have had a client who was at the last stage of his cancer, and we made arrangements with the DIFC to visit their place, their home, and register the will there. This was actually pre-pandemic. I remember we visited this place, and the gentleman could hardly speak. He, of course, was able to comply with the minimum requirements to enable him to write the will. And he did pass away actually after a few days.
Okay.
Very, very sad
Yeah.
situation. But yeah, I mean, to answer your question, yes, I mean, the courts here, DIFC and ADJD, they do make special accommodations, and they can actually fast track things.
Right.
The rest is left to the lawyers. I mean, how fast you can actually draft the document
Yeah.
and how fast the client can actually review the document.
Right.
So we can do it literally in a day or in a few hours.
Right. So, in the event that I'm barely meeting the minimum requirements, or someone who wants to get their will done immediately is barely meeting the minimum requirements, what are the minimum requirements? What do you have to be capable of to be able to include or specify for the will to be valid?
Well, of course, you need to be over the age of 21.
Okay.
And in this example of the cancer patient,
Hmm.
when I mentioned he met the minimum requirements was that he was of sane mind. He could understand what was being written on the piece of paper. So that was the minimum requirement. Of course, I mean, if you're not in this state where you are able to understand or comprehend things,
Right.
then you don't meet the minimum requirements. And in fact, in the drafting of the will, we do write that I am of sane mind and of the age
A
of
declaration.
majority, and
Okay.
I can understand what is being written. So
Mm.
that element has to be met. I mean,
Okay.
if you're not of sane mind, then you
Mm.
can't understand anything, and hence you can't write a will.
Right. And is something as simple of a statement as everything I own, movable or immovable, goes to XYZ person, and that's sufficient?
That is sufficient. I mean,
Okay.
of course, I mean, for elaboration, we do mention all the movable and immovable assets, like bank accounts, all the bank accounts, be they joint accounts or single
Right.
accounts, properties, shares in companies, end of service benefits, the remainder of the salary if you pass away
Right.
during a month, for example, digital assets, for example,
Right.
could be anything that that is available for distribution. So we do in a broad definition.
So
We
just
do
to
mention
clarify
these
the
things.
distinction that you mentioned earlier, that you don't really list down the specifics,
Correct.
but you list down categories.
Categories. So, for
Okay.
example, bank account is a category.
Right.
So we say all the movable and immovable assets.
You don't specify which bank
including-
accounts.
Correct.
Okay, great.
Including any and all bank accounts,
Okay.
joint or single.
Okay.
Any and all properties, end of service benefits, and so on and so forth.
Great. Thank you for that. And what are the different roles that people have to play within a will? One is the beneficiary who is benefiting
Right.
from the assets. Are there any other roles?
Right. So the beneficiary is the person who takes the assets as the beneficiary. He is the beneficiary. He or she doesn't have to play a role as such. The role is being played by the executor and the guardian. So executor is someone who is supposed to take the will to the court to have it implemented.
And it can be the same as a beneficiary.
It can be the same as the beneficiary. This is how it works in the UAE. So if the spouse is the beneficiary, we typically appoint the spouse as the executor. So it is simple and straightforward for the same person to actually take the will to the court to have it executed. And then the guardian. So that is a role for someone to play. The guardian, again, the spouse.
So it can be one person playing all three roles.
Correct.
Okay.
One person can play all three roles. And then there are alternates as well.
Okay.
So, for example, you appoint your wife as the beneficiary and the executor and the guardian, and something happens to your wife either before you pass away
Right.
or at the same time, then what happens is that you rely on the alternate clauses where you would appoint an alternate beneficiary.
Okay.
Typically, what happens in the UAE is that you end up appointing your children as the alternate beneficiaries.
And if you don't have children?
Then you can appoint anyone who you think should inherit your assets.
Okay.
So if you leave children behind, you appoint the beneficiary, you appoint them as the beneficiaries, and then you appoint guardian for them, appoint a guardian for them. So the guardian would take care of the children. And if the guardian happens to be living outside the UAE, you'd appoint a temporary guardian who would take care of the children in the interim until the permanent guardian arrives in the UAE to take custody of the minor children.
So Tariq, now addressing the elephant in the room. We're doing an episode of Think and Grow 10X after an extended break. And there was a reason for that break. Also, at the same time, though you've been assisting individuals and families with their wills for over a decade now, you recently had to get your own sorted. Without putting you on the spotlight and on the spot, could you explain to us what happened and what put you on that spot where you had to address this for yourself?
Generally speaking, I mean, I'm someone who lives a very healthy life.
I've seen it.
Yeah.
Every day, we've been working together for the last 3 years. Every day at 2 p.m., you have your sweet potatoes and your salmon. Every morning at 9:10, you have your eggs.
Yeah.
This is famous in the entire office.
Yes, that's right. So, I mean, I lead a very disciplined life.
Right.
My food is well sorted,
Mm.
and I like my food. I enjoy my food, and it's usually very, very healthy.
Mm.
I do eat sweets a little bit over the weekends,
Mm.
and I exercise 5 times a week. So I've been living a very healthy life for quite some time, actually. I've been exercising for the last 18 years.
Mm.
And suddenly, I mean, recently, about 3 months ago, I went through a medical checkup and found out that, I had some abnormality in my ECG report. And upon investigation, we found out in a few days that, my arteries were almost completely blocked. All 3 arteries in the heart. And I was advised to go through a bypass surgery on an urgent basis. It came as a shock to me, especially given
the
that
lifestyle you lead.
given the lifestyle that I've been leading. I've been leading a very healthy lifestyle, very disciplined lifestyle, and I never thought that I would find myself in a situation where I'd have to go through this kind of a surgery. Thankfully, I went through it, and it's been just over 2 months now. Actually, today is just exactly 2 months since my bypass surgery. I never thought that I would have to go through this kind of a surgery. But that's the reality of life. I mean, we tend to find surprises. In my case, it was a surprise, but when I look back, it's not. Because although I was leading a healthy life, at the same time, I've had blood pressure and cholesterol issues. They were not significant. And I always thought that I was able to manage both of those conditions well
Because of the lifestyle.
because of the lifestyle, because of the healthy eating and regular exercise. But that wasn't the case. It was a mistaken belief that I was taking care of it. But thankfully, I found out this in time, just before there was an explosion, and luckily, there was a remedy available, and I went through it, and I'm recovering at the moment.
Wow.
To answer your question now,
Hmm.
what made me think of a will was simple. I mean, in the previous years, ever since I've been advising clients on will writing, the option wasn't available for the Muslims.
Right.
First of all, the option has been made available very recently. And one thing that I immediately thought of after I found out this particular episode in my life was my family. Whether or not I'm leaving them in the right shape. It's like any typical expat, we came here for a better life. We came here to work and to earn a living and to settle down as a family. And we have settled down, alhamdulillah. The immediate question, of course, was that if we've settled down, are they going to be in the right shape? If this was it for me. Because, if you look back a number of years ago when we grew up, bypass was it still is a major surgery.
Absolutely.
But at that point in time, it was considered to be life-threatening.
Yes.
Some people wouldn't come back.
Yeah.
Nowadays, success ratio is very, very high. It's almost 100%. But
But it's not a minor procedure.
It's
of
not a
course.
minor procedure,
It's
and
life changing.
given that um, historical significance of this surgery and critical nature of this surgery, one is bound to think that
Yeah.
what if you don't come back? And that what if made me think, about my family, of course. I mean, the first thing that I ever thought of after finding out that I needed a surgery, a bypass surgery, was my family.
Tariq, I appreciate that. And I think then you'll be able to give the viewers some more detailed insight as well, because a lot of the things that we touched on today apply to you. You're a founder, you're an entrepreneur, you're a married man with children, some of them minor. So, and at the same time, you're leading a group of companies that has over 130 people involved in it. Their livelihoods are dependent on it. All of these thoughts, the document is in front of you. Again, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but what kind of thoughts go through your mind when you're faced with mortality like this? And all of these areas when you thought, hey, I'm checking and ticking all the boxes, I'm taking care of my health, I'm eating my vitamins, saying my prayers, and I'm working out on a regular basis. How much more can I do, right?
Yeah.
Taking care of the body, taking care of the mind, taking care of the soul. But so many dependents. How do you, because that's a very human side of
Yeah,
the
of
will.
course.
It's not mechanical, it's not legal, it's a piece of paper right there in front of you that you have to fill out
Yeah.
that forces you to face your mortality.
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, I mean, family was the first thing that came to my mind, of course. And then, of course, you think about all the other people who are associated with you, because it's just not, it's not business. It's, it's a social cause that we're serving. We're creating employment opportunities. There's so many lives who are dependent on a certain business. And I feel that, it's taking care of everyone along with the family that matters. So there were many, many thoughts that came to mind when I thought of, going through this surgery. Of course, family, and then my extended family, which is the workplace. Everyone who's associated at the workplace, and how I need to take care of that.
I just wanted to know, how long did this process take you? Did you already have it sorted and categorized in your head? Or did you have to sit down and lock yourself up maybe?
It did take me a couple of weeks.
Weeks?
A couple of weeks just to think things through. I'm a person who firmly believes in Sharia law. The reason that I had not written my will was that I wanted to make sure that if I do something, it's Sharia compliant.
Right.
So I was looking to come up with a structure which takes care of the situation and still complies with the Sharia law. So I've had to, do some homework in terms of, putting the right paperwork in place. Not only writing the will, but also doing some associated stuff with that to ensure that, I am following those principles of Sharia law. For me, it's very, very important. That's the reason that it took me a couple of weeks. Otherwise, it would have been a simple matter of just drafting the document.
So again, and you don't have to share this if you feel it's too much, but you've been advising on wills and structures, again, for over a decade, and you've done it thousands of times. Yet you felt the need to research more. What are we talking about here?
I wanted to make sure that the document was Sharia compliant.
Okay. So from that angle.
From that angle.
Okay.
Because a lot of the clients who actually take our advice, they are, of course, they have a simple solution that they're looking for. and that is readily available. So in my case, it was slightly different. I wanted to walk an opposite path, yet secure the right outcome. So that's the reason I had to think about it a lot harder. Before that, before this situation arose, I was taking care of the estate planning part through, through other means. For example, direct ownership by my spouse, for example, and other means. But one thing that I realized that I was missing out on actually reaching the point where the family is taken care of in proper legal format. So this was the time when I had to stop. This became the most important thing at the time, to make sure that if something happens to me, they don't suffer.
Yeah.
And that's how it works. And if there's one message that I would want to pass on to everyone around here, is that I was lucky that I got a second chance.
Yeah.
We've seen instances where people just pass away just like that. They have been taking care of themselves very well. They are, very healthy individuals.
And this was a very incidental checkup that you had
Correct.
where you discovered this.
Correct.
Yes.
So it was just an incidental checkup. A lot of people don't get that chance, and a lot of people, an accident can happen on the road.
Yeah.
There can be a sudden cardiac arrest. There can be anything. You might get a diagnosis which is completely shocking. So you can't leave these things until the last moment. It's good that I got a second chance in this respect, and I'm back and I'm speaking to you. But what if I didn't have a second chance? What if I didn't have the time to think about it at all? What if
life happened?
Correct.
Yeah.
So that happens with some people, and you don't want to be leaving your family in a limbo. When the very reason that you've come to the UAE is to give them a better future, to give them better livelihood. You've worked hard to make something. You've worked hard to generate some income for your family, to secure their future. And if for the sake of just a few hours or a few thousand dirhams, you don't pay attention to this document, then what justice are you doing with your family?
All of that gone to vain.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is one thought, everyone, I'd just like to insist a little bit.
Yeah.
Everyone knows that it's important to live a healthy life. Everyone knows that they should be exercising, they should be doing this or that. But not many people end up exercising. The same thing goes with the wills. This is the reason that, everyone knows that this is the most important document in the UAE. They must have this document to secure their family. Why they can't do it? It's just unbelievably, wrong. It's just that they're putting this off. They don't want to address this situation because it's slightly emotional.
It's difficult to face your mortality.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's difficult to face your mortality, and you've rightly said. It's something that everyone must address. If you've come to this country, make sure that your family's future is secure from all sides, not in your bank only.
Yeah.
Because the bank account will be frozen and you will not be around if that situation takes place.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with us or with the viewers that we haven't covered already? Or a message that you would like to share?
The message is simple. I went through a life situation and I was lucky enough to actually think about the situation. I was lucky enough to come back. One day there will not be a second chance. The day will definitely come. And thankfully, I've addressed that issue of estate planning. But not everyone gets a second chance.
If you're listening to this and you've been meaning to get your will done, this is your sign. Do it for your family. Do it for your peace of mind. Do it because uncertainty is the one thing that none of us want to leave behind. Hit subscribe, share this episode with anyone that you feel needs to hear it. And check the description for a free consultation with Legal Ins on how to get your will started right away. Thank you, Tariq, for your generosity in sharing your insights and sharing your life with us. And thank you for being a guest on your own show and allowing me to be the host.
Thank you for being a wonderful host, Sharjeel. Thank you.
I appreciate it. These aren't always easy topics to talk about, but they're very important to face and they're very important to address. So if this episode has brought you any clarity, any sense of urgency, or just a nudge to address this topic, then we've done our job. I'm Sharjeel Akhtar. Until next time, take care of your mission, your vision, your mind, and your legacy.
I created Think and Grow 10x because I believe that everyone has the potential to break through barriers and to achieve extraordinary success. If this video today brought you closer to your goals, then give it a like and share it with someone who's ready to take their journey of growth. Until next time, keep believing, keep thinking, and keep growing 10x.